somebody like this guy out there who's fearless, who's great looking, he's young, and get these initiatives going.
For 8 years, they were the most famous roommates in America. Every Tuesday night, millions of families welcomed John Ritter's clumsy charm, Joyce DeWitt's grounded patience, and Suzanne Somers' sweet confusion into their living rooms. But behind the laughter, something was breaking. A dispute so bitter it would get Suzanne Somers fired. So personal it would leave the cast estranged for 30 years. The three people who played best friends on television would not speak a single word to each other off camera for more than 3 decades. When the reunion offers came, Suzanne Somers said no. Every time. Now we know why. The making of Three's Company. In the history of American television, few shows have achieved what Three's Company accomplished. For 8 seasons, from 1977 to 1984, it ranked among the most watched programs on network television, peaking as the #2 show in the country and remaining in the top 10 for 6 consecutive years. It made household names of its 3 leads, launched catchphrases that entered the cultural dictionary, and became a syndication powerhouse that has entertained audiences for nearly 5 decades. But behind the laughter that filled the studio audience every week, something else was happening. The cast that appeared so comfortable with one another on screen was not a unified ensemble off-camera. And before the show ended, something would happen that fractured the cast so completely that the 3 principal actors would not stand on the same stage together again for more than 30 years. Some of them would never speak to one another again at all. In 1973, British television writers Brian Cook and Johnny Mortimer created a sitcom for Thames Television called Man About the House. The premise was simple. 2 young women sharing a flat in London decide to take on a male lodger to help with the rent, but tell their curious landlord that the man is gay to avoid any questions. The show ran for 6 series and became a hit in Britain. An American television producer named Donald L. Taftner saw potential in the concept. Taftner had spent years in the television business, starting as a mailboy at the William Morris Agency before building his own production company. In 1975, he acquired the rights to adapt Man About the House for American audiences. The task of turning a British sitcom into something that would work for American network television would prove more difficult than anyone anticipated. The first attempt came from Peter Stone, a renowned Broadway writer. Stone reimagined the show set in New York, with the male character as a successful but underpaid chef, one female roommate as an executive secretary, and the other as a high-fashion model. When Fred Silverman, the programming chief at ABC, read the script, he made a judgment that would prove decisive. Silverman believed Middle America would not connect with these characters. So, he passed on the project. But Silverman did not give up on the idea entirely. He approached Larry Gelbart, the creator and producer of MASH, and asked for help. Gelbart was initially reluctant. He felt the idea was too simple, too far beneath the standards he had set with his critically acclaimed military comedy. But as a favor to Silverman, Gelbart agreed to develop a pilot with his son-in-law. It was Gelbart who came up with the title Three's Company. This version followed the British original more closely. The male roommate became David Bell, an aspiring filmmaker who happened to be a good cook. The female roommates were Jenny, a DMV employee, and Samantha, an aspiring actress. They lived in an apartment complex called the Hacienda Palms in North Hollywood. A pilot was taped in early 1976, and ABC scheduled it for the fall lineup. But at the last minute, the network pulled it, deciding other shows had more promise. When CBS expressed interest in picking up the show, ABC suddenly changed its mind. Fred Silverman wanted the show after all, but with one condition: a new cast and a new creative direction. To remake the show, the network brought in Don Nickel, Michael Ross, and Bernie West, writers who had worked on All in the Family. Their version would follow the British source material even more faithfully. The male character became Jack Tripp, later changed to Jack Tripper, a cooking student just like his British counterpart. Samantha became Chrissy, a secretary. Jenny became Janet, a florist. And they moved the setting from North Hollywood to Santa Monica, placing the apartment within walking distance of the beach. The creative team conceived the show as an all-out farce. Each episode would build on misunderstandings, mistaken identities, and the kind of physical comedy that had worked in theater for centuries. They wrote a pilot that was essentially a remake of the second episode of the British series, titled And Mother Makes Four. The network approved the pilot, but there was a problem. The actress cast as Chrissy, Susan Lanier, did not quite satisfy the producers. Something about her portrayal was not clicking. Fred Silverman scheduled the show for a March 1977 premiere anyway, but he ordered a search for another actress to play the role. The day before production was set to begin, Silverman sat in his office watching audition tapes, fast-forwarding through them in desperation. Then he saw something he had not noticed before. An actress named Suzanne Somers had auditioned, and her tape had somehow been overlooked or rejected by the production staff. Silverman recognized her from an appearance on The Tonight Show. He watched her audition and knew immediately she was right for the part. When he asked the producers why she had been passed over, no one could give him a straight answer. They called Somers that day, and she was on the set the next morning. Joyce DeWitt had already been cast as Janet. She came to the role with a background in theater, having studied at UCLA and earned a master's degree in fine arts. Acting was her craft, her profession, and her calling. John Ritter had been cast as Jack Tripper. He had been working steadily in television and film throughout the early 1970s. What the producers saw in him was a quality that would define the show. An ability to combine verbal comedy with physical pratfalls in a way that recalled the great silent film comedians. When the three actors finally stood together on the soundstage at CBS Television City, something clicked. The chemistry was there, visible to anyone watching. The show taped its first episodes in early 1977, and on March 15th of that year, the first episode of Three's Company aired on ABC. All 6 episodes of the first season had been completed before anyone knew whether audiences would respond. And they did. The show finished its abbreviated first season ranked 11th in the Nielsen ratings. By its second season, it was the third most watched show in America. By the third season, it reached number 2, a position it would hold for 2 consecutive years. But beneath the success, tensions were building. The show that brought these 3 actors together would also drive them apart. And the conflict that erupted would become one of the most famous behind-the-scenes disputes in television history, leaving the cast estranged for decades. The challenges behind the scenes. When audiences watched Three's Company on Tuesday nights, they saw a show that looked effortless. The jokes landed, the cast seemed comfortable, and the laughter from the studio audience felt genuine. But keeping that show on the air required constant work. Behind the cameras, the production faced one challenge after another, from network fights to cast changes to the simple difficulty of making people laugh week after week. The first challenge was getting the show on the air at all. A man living with 2 women was not something American television had tried before, at least not as the main idea of a primetime comedy. The co-ed living arrangement made network executives worry about angry letters from viewers. They worried about the Federal Communications Commission getting complaints. And they worried about affiliates in more conservative parts of the country refusing to air the show. Even after the show was approved, The network kept a close watch on every script. Writers would turn in a draft, and network censors would send it back with notes. Jokes that went too far had to be rewritten. Double meanings that were too obvious had to be toned down. The producers had to walk a fine line, make the show funny enough to attract viewers, but keep it clean enough to stay on the air. Every episode was a negotiation between what the writers wanted to do and what the network would allow. The show also had to defend itself against critics who did not like what it stood for. Religious groups spoke out against the program. Some said it promoted immoral living arrangements. Others said the humor was inappropriate for television. Conservative watchdog organizations kept pressure on ABC to clean up the show or cancel it entirely. The producers responded by keeping things as innocent as they could while still being funny. There was also criticism from people who felt the show made fun of the queer community. Jack's lie to the landlord, pretending to be gay so the Ropers would let him live with 2 women, bothered some viewers. They said it treated the queer community as a joke, but others saw it differently. They pointed out that the show gave the community visibility. For many viewers in the late 1970s, this was the first time they had seen a gay person portrayed in a sitcom at all. The character of Jack Tripper, pretending to be something he was not, opened a door that had been closed for a long time. The show's humor also drew fire for its treatment of women. Suzanne Somers played Chrissy Snow as what people called a dumb blonde. The character was sweet and well-meaning, but not very bright. Some critics said this reinforced old stereotypes about women being less intelligent than men. Fans of the show did not seem to mind. Chrissy was one of the most popular characters on television, but the criticism never fully went away. Behind the scenes, the creative team was dealing with its own problems. The 3 men who developed the American version, Don Nickel, Michael Ross, and Bernie West, had been with the show since the beginning. They knew these characters inside and out. They knew what made Jack funny and what made Chrissy work. But in 1981, after 4 seasons, they left the show to develop other projects. New producers took over. Bud Grossman and George Burdett stepped in to run the show, and things changed. The humor shifted. The stories changed. The new producers had their own ideas about what made Three's Company work, and those ideas were not always the same as the original team's. The show kept getting good ratings, but something was different. There were also problems with the actors who played the supporting roles. Norman Fell and Audra Lindley played the Ropers, the landlords who owned the apartment building. The audience loved them. They were so popular that ABC decided to give them their own show. In 1979, the Ropers spun off from Three's Company, and Fell and Lindley left the show that had made them famous. A BC made them a promise. If the Ropers did not work out, they could come back to Three's Company. It seemed like a fair deal, but when the Ropers was canceled after 2 seasons, ABC changed its mind. The network said there was no room for them to return. Don Knotts had already been hired to play the new landlord, Ralph Furley, and he was doing well in the role. Fell and Lindley were left out, and they were bitter about it for a long time. The show had to keep finding new actors to fill the cast. After Suzanne Somers left, the producers needed someone to play a new roommate. They brought in Jenna Lee Harrison to play Cindy Snow, Chrissy's cousin. Cindy was sweet and well-meaning, but she was also clumsy and a little naive. The character was meant to fill the same role Chrissy had played, but audiences did not connect with her the same way. After 1 season, the producers tried again. They brought in Priscilla Barnes to play Terry Alden, a new nurse who moved in with Jack and Janet. Terry was smarter and more put together than Cindy had been. She was a different kind of character. But even with a new roommate, the ratings slipped a little. The show was still popular, but the magic of the early seasons was getting harder to find. Through all of these changes, the show remained one of the most successful sitcoms of its time. It started conversations about things television had not talked about before. It paved the way for later shows like Friends and Will and Grace. But there was one challenge the show could not overcome. One dispute got so bad, so personal, and so bitter that it broke the cast apart and changed everything. The dispute that ruined the show. By 1980, Three's Company was at the top of the television world. The cast was famous. The show was making money for ABC, and behind the scenes, the money was about to become a problem. Suzanne Somers looked at her paycheck and saw a number that did not match what she thought she was worth. She was making $30,000 per episode. That was a lot of money by any normal measure. But John Ritter was making $150,000 per episode, 5 times what she made. Joyce DeWitt made less than Ritter too, but the gap between Somers and Ritter was the biggest, and it bothered her the most. Somers had a point. She was not just another cast member. Her face was on magazine covers. Her fan mail pile was as big as anyone's. When she appeared on talk shows, audiences responded. She had become a star in her own right, separate from the show. The character of Chrissy Snow was one of the most recognized on television. Somers believed she deserved to be paid like it. Her husband and manager, Alan Hamel, encouraged her to fight for more money. Hamel had been in the television business for years. He knew how things worked. He pointed out that in Hollywood, men got paid more than women for the same work all the time. He told Somers this was her chance to change that. She should ask for what she was worth and not back down. When contract negotiations came up in 1980, Somers made her request. She wanted $150,000 per episode, the same as John Ritter, and she wanted 10% of the show's profits. It was a huge ask. It would have made her one of the highest-paid actors on television. But ABC said no. The network executives explained that John Ritter was the star of the show. He was the one audiences came to see. He did the physical comedy. He carried every episode. He deserved the money he was getting. Somers was important, they said, but she was not the lead. She was just part of an ensemble. The money she was making was fair for someone in her position. Somers did not accept that answer. She kept pushing, and the network kept refusing. The talks went nowhere. Both sides dug in. Somers believed she was fighting for fairness. The network believed she was being unreasonable and greedy. The producers had to figure out what to do. They had a contract with Somers for the season. They had to pay her whether she appeared on the show or not. But they did not have to put her in the episodes. They came up with a plan that was creative and cruel at the same time. They wrote Somers out of the main stories. Her scenes were filmed separately, often not with the rest of the cast. She would appear for about a minute per episode, usually in a short segment at the beginning. She would deliver a few lines, maybe have a quick phone conversation, and then disappear. The rest of the episode would go on without her. For Somers, it was humiliating. She had been one of the stars of the show. Now she was showing up to work, filming her little bits alone, and leaving. She did not interact with John Ritter or Joyce DeWitt. She did not get to be part of the comedy. She was isolated, kept separate, and treated like an outsider on the show that had made her famous. The other cast members were put in an awkward position. John Ritter stayed out of the fight publicly. He did not take sides, at least not where anyone could see. Joyce DeWitt has said in later years that she did not understand what was happening at the time. She was young and focused on her work. She did not know the details of the negotiations. She just knew that her friend and co-star was suddenly not around anymore. By the spring of 1981, it was over. a BC fired Suzanne Somers. The character of Chrissy Snow was written out of the show. The media had a field day with the story. Suzanne Somers was portrayed as difficult, as greedy, as someone who let success go to her head. The narrative was not kind to her. She became an example of what happened when actors asked for too much. Years later, she would say that the coverage was unfair. She was not being greedy. She was asking to be paid the same as her male co-star. She was fighting for something that should have been automatic. The dispute changed everything. Three's Company kept going for 3 more seasons after Somers left. It lasted until 1984, ending after 8 seasons total. But it was never the same. The energy was different. The laughter was a little quieter. The show that had been a ratings powerhouse became just another sitcom, running out its final seasons before fading into syndication. For Suzanne Somers, the years after her firing were hard. She could not find work in television for a while. Producers did not want to hire someone with a reputation for being difficult. She had to rebuild her career from scratch, starting over in Las Vegas and on the road, doing stage shows and nightclub appearances. It took years before she found her way back. John Ritter kept working until his sudden death in 2003. He became one of the most beloved actors in Hollywood. Joyce DeWitt stepped away from acting for a long time. She needed distance from the business, from the show, and from everything that had happened. The 3 of them, who had once seemed so close on screen, went their separate ways and did not look back. Why Suzanne Somers never attended reunions? For more than 30 years, the 3 stars of Three's Company did not stand on the same stage together. They did not appear at award shows. They did not do interviews together. They did not attend the reunions and retrospectives that television networks love to produce. When Suzanne Somers was fired in 1981, she left more than just the show. She left behind whatever friendships she had built with John Ritter and Joyce DeWitt. The separation was immediate and complete. They did not call each other. They did not check in. They went their separate ways and stayed there. Joyce DeWitt has spoken about those years. She said she felt betrayed. In her view, the cast had been a team. They had worked together to build something special. When Somers asked for more money and a piece of the profits, DeWitt saw it as putting herself above the group. She believed Somers broke the trust that held the cast together. Whether that was fair or not, it was how she felt, and she carried that feeling for a very long time. John Ritter kept his thoughts more private. He was the star of the show, the one everyone looked to. In interviews over the years, he talked about the importance of ensemble work. A sitcom works best, he said, when everyone is pulling in the same direction. When one person puts their own interests ahead of the group, it throws everything off. Ritter stayed friendly with Somers in public. They would say nice things about each other when asked, but they never worked together again. He went on to have a successful career in film and television. He became the kind of actor who was loved by everyone who worked with him. When he died suddenly in 2003 from an aortic dissection, it was a shock to Hollywood and to fans everywhere. He was only 54 years old. His death closed the door on any possibility of a full Three's Company reunion. Without John Ritter, there was no show to bring back. The heart of the series was gone. Whatever chance existed for the 3 of them to come together died with him. Suzanne Somers, for her part, did not spend those decades waiting for a phone call. She built a new life and a new career that had nothing to do with Chrissy Snow. In the early 1990s, she became the face of the Thigh Master, a piece of exercise equipment that sold millions of units. She appeared on infomercials late at night, demonstrating the product with energy and enthusiasm. It made her rich all over again. From there, She built an empire. She wrote books about health and aging. She created a line of beauty products. She became a wellness advocate, traveling the country speaking to audiences about how to stay young and healthy. She wrote more than 25 books, many of them bestsellers. She started a new television show, Step by Step, that ran for 7 seasons on ABC, the same network that had fired her years before. It was a comeback story that surprised everyone. Somers did not look back at Three's Company with nostalgia. She had moved on. When interviewers asked about the old show, she answered politely, but she did not dwell on it. She was focused on the present, on what she was building, not on what she had left behind. Still, the estrangement weighed on her, especially with Joyce DeWitt. They had shared a small apartment on a soundstage for 4 years. They had played best friends on television. And then, nothing. No phone calls and no letters. In 2012, Somers decided to change that. She had a talk show at the time called Suzanne Somers, Breaking Through. She invited Joyce DeWitt to appear as a guest. To everyone's surprise, DeWitt said yes. The episode was emotional. The two women sat across from each other and talked about what had happened. DeWitt explained that she had felt blindsided by the dispute. She had not understood what was going on behind the scenes. She only knew that her friend and co-star was suddenly gone, and the show was different. She felt abandoned. Somers listened. She explained her side, the fight for fair pay, the way the network isolated her, and the humiliation of filming alone. She said she never meant to hurt DeWitt or Ritter. She was fighting a battle she believed in, and she did not realize how it would look to the people she worked with. They held hands. They said things they had waited 3 decades to say. When the episode ended, there was a sense that something had healed, at least a little. But it did not lead to more. They did not become friends after that. They did not do joint interviews or appear at events together. The talk show reunion was a moment of closure, not a new beginning. The wounds had been too deep and had lasted too long. They could be civil. They could acknowledge each other's pain. But they could not go back to being the women who shared an apartment on Santa Monica Boulevard. When Three's Company reunions were proposed over the years, Suzanne Somers said no. She gave different reasons at different times. Sometimes she said she had moved on and did not want to dwell in the past. Sometimes she pointed out that without John Ritter, a reunion would feel incomplete. Sometimes she simply said she was too busy with her other work. All of these reasons were true. But the deeper reason was simpler. The show represented a painful time in her life. It was where she became a star, yes, but it was also where she was humiliated, isolated, and fired. It was where friendships ended and silence began. Asking her to celebrate that show was asking her to celebrate something that had caused her real pain. She was not willing to do it. Joyce DeWitt understood. In later years, she softened her view of what had happened. She acknowledged that Somers was fighting for something important, even if the way it played out hurt the people around her. She said she regretted the decades of silence, but she also understood why Somers kept her distance. The fans who loved Three's Company have had to accept that there will never be a big reunion special. There will never be a moment when Jack, Janet, and Chrissy sit together on a couch and talk about the old days. John Ritter is gone. Suzanne Somers passed away in 2023 after a long battle with breast cancer. Joyce DeWitt carries the memories alone now. The cast could not come back together. But the show they made keeps playing somewhere every single day. And that is its own kind of reunion. Do you think Suzanne Somers' request for a higher pay was wrong? Drop your answers in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching. And if you enjoy this video, please click on the next one on your screen.